Hail and well-met Slayers of Giants. Welcome to Chapter 6 of my serial novel, Tilting at Windmills. Remember, this is a draft. I'll be very grateful for your feedback throughout, so please comment away on whatever platform you're finding this, and become a patron of my Patreon or subscribe to my Substack so you'll get a little reminder each week when a new chapter comes out. Here's Tilting at Windmills, Chapter 6, Capitalism, Chivalry, and Other Ghosts. After his meeting with his friends, Benjamin had to decide how long to remain in Oregon. Though his lawyer had contacted the corporation, which had stolen his soon-to-be ex's store, its owners hadn't yet replied. On an emotional level, Benjamin couldn't bear to be at the beck and call of the same corporate bastards who'd already done such damage to his life. On a financial level, he was broke and unemployed, so he felt a strong urge to get to Cleveland as soon as possible in order to start working there. His parents were generous enough to offer him a place to crash. They'd bought a camping cot and put it in the den in their little two-bedroom house in their staged care retirement village. And they'd offered to let him stay for as long as he needed, though he hoped he could be substitute teaching and able to afford his own place in a few weeks. Waiting around for the very crooks who'd taken his wife's store to deign to a first meeting, where they would inevitably tell Benjamin and his wife to kick rocks, meant fewer days in the school year for him to begin to shore up his finances before the summer break. So Benjamin bought a one-way ticket with a layover in Salt Lake City, just in case a last-minute meeting was called there. This paired nicely with Rolando's sense of urgency. The knight-errant had already made his inspection of the Denver airport and felt no need to investigate Salt Lake City. In Salt Lake, Benjamin made his way up to a third-floor exit on the other side of security so he could take pictures of the Rocky Mountains. Pictures which couldn't decide whether to focus on the shiny skyscrapers or the white-capped peaks and compromised on neither. Meanwhile, Rolando took Serge to a newsstand and bookstore to purchase snacks. He offered the woman behind the counter $1,000 in cash, and when she explained they didn't have anywhere near enough change in the till, he told her to keep the difference. When Rolando and Serge returned to the gate for the flight to Cleveland, where they would board before Benjamin returned and not catch sight of one another, Serge frowned and opened his mouth to speak, took a short inhale of breath, decided against it, and tried to focus on the game he was playing on his phone.
"Clearly you have something you wish to discuss, good Squire Sanchez," Rolando said. "As you Americans say, expectorated."
No one says that.
"True, I have never heard anyone say this phrase in English anywhere in the world," Rolando admitted. "They ought to, though. It sounds powerful and fancy, no? So spit out this thing you wish to say."
Well, I'm very appreciative of your offer of 5 salaries, but I have a couple concerns.
Ah, you wish to discuss money.
Sort of. I mean, when you were fighting the giant, I realized that if you died, I haven't signed any contract or anything, and no one knows that you promised to pay me, right? So if you were to die, or, I don't know, slip into a coma or just change your mind, I wouldn't get paid anything.
I assure you, Sarah, I am a man of my word.
Of course, I'm not saying you would cheat me, but if you died, would I still get paid?
I have made all the necessary arrangements. You needn't worry.
Good, Serge said, and he tried to focus on his game for a bit. Then he turned back to Rolando. It's just, we never talked about any specific amount of money, and I've noticed you don't seem to have a normal sense of what things cost. And so I probably shouldn't say anything, because you tend to overpay, but...
Who have I overpaid?
The woman who let us sleep in her house.
The innkeeper?
A hotel is like $100 a night. You paid her 10 times that per room.
Surely an inn is more expensive than an hotel.
It wasn't an inn.
Rolando shrugged. It was for us.
Well, yeah, that's my point. You basically bought the place for the night and made it into your personal inn, Serge said. Rolando waited for more explanation. Serge tried. And that's a lot more expensive than staying at a place that's already an inn. And then just now, we got these little bags of candy and these drinks, and they are crazy overpriced at an airport. Like this much candy, he held up the small resealable bag, is like $5 worth, and they charge like 12. He held up his plastic bottle of soda. This Coke is like $2 or $3, and they charge like 5. But you gave her $1,000 for $20 of overpriced snacks. So if you're going to pay me 10 times what I'm worth, that's great, but I kind of feel like it's my job to protect you from getting ripped off by everybody.
Rolando nodded. This is well done, my good squire. Yes, you should concern yourself with keeping my expenses in order, if only to make sure we do not draw too much attention to ourselves. But do not haggle in a way that is unbecoming for a person of my status. For, while it is appropriate that you, as a commoner, should concern yourself with money, you must understand that the rich and the poor understand money in diametrically opposite ways.
Is this like a crypto thing?
No. Well, sort of. No, but related. You see, common people want money. Rich people do not.
What do you mean? Rich people love money. They have all the money.
Rolando shook his head. No, my good squire. Poor people believe rich people have all the money. But rich people do not want to have the money. Money, you see, is a very bad investment. If I have a single of your US dollars in my pocket, I am losing money at a rate of approximately 3% per year.
So, what, you want to have gold?
Rolando shook his head again. Gold? No, gold is for cranks and libertarians and preppers. No, we want to have debt.
Debt?
I do not want to have $1 in my pocket. I want to have you owe me $1 at an interest rate of 15% per year. And then I want to sell your debt to a bank that will lend it out to 5 people who will all promise 15%. And then I want to use that debt as leverage to buy a house. And then, even though I have not paid for the house yet, I want to use the leverage to buy an office building. And then a castle. And then I want to convince people I am so good with money that they should buy my new cryptocurrency. Billionaires do not have billions of dollars, my good squire. Where would they keep them? $1 billion would form a cube, 40 of your feet high, 40 feet wide, and 40 feet long. And what could you do with such a block of paper? It is only slightly more edible than gold.
But overpaying for everything, Serge said, doesn't that make you poorer?
Rolando nodded slowly. You would think so. But no, not really. Overpaying makes you seem rich. Being rich makes people want to borrow money from you. Having people borrow money from you makes you rich.
So it's a confidence game, a con job.
Of course. Capitalism is the con job which replaced the feudal system which made my ancestors lords and earls and dukes.
So basically you're making money by magic. At this, Rolando's face became somber.
No, quite the opposite. When I teleport you through a door, you really are on the other side, no?
Serge vividly remembered the sensation of his stomach telling him it and all its contents were misplaced. Sure.
If I stood on the front porch and told you that you belonged inside, that everywhere outside the house belonged to me, and that unless you could get safely inside the house, you had to pay me rent to breathe the air and feel the heat of the sun, and then I offered you the key, and you went in, and you were trapped there, and you felt grateful to be there, and you paid me money every time you came out, that would be capitalism. But would it be magic?
That would be stupid.
Really? Tell me, good Squire Sanchez, if you could perform this trick and make people pay you to exist, would you do so?
Serge nodded. I probably would.
This is why it works. As long as people want to play the stupid game, they will continue to win the stupid prizes.
But they don't even win, Serge said.
They fear a world without the stupid prizes more than they fear the stupid game.
The attendant called their group, and after they'd lined up, showed their boarding passes and IDs, Serge using his license, Rolando his passport, and found their seats, Rolando buckled in and turned to Serge.
This talk of money is not completely unrelated to my worry about what we will find in the land of cleaving, and what may befall us there if the Lady of the Great Lake, Iriel Honan, asks me to pledge myself to her. I have not yet explained this to you, but I think you must learn the nature of chivalry before we meet with her. According to all you have heard, what exactly is a knight-errant?
I don't know. It's a guy who puts on a suit of armor and rides a horse around and fights dragons.
Tell me more. Who does he fight for?
Like a princess, and she drops a glove out of a window and he sniffs it or something, and he fights other knights and has a shield with a bunch of fancy symbols on it.
You know perhaps a bit more than most, my good squire.
Oh yeah, and he has a squire who's a knight in training.
Good. This is correct, at least some of the time. Everything you say is correct, and yet most of it is the least important parts of the truth. Do I ride a horse?
I don't know, do you?
Not currently. I ride an airplane. Yet I am still a knight-errant. Do I fight with dragons?
Do you?
As rarely as possible. They are quite difficult to defeat, and they are endangered. One should not fight them unless absolutely necessary. Do I wear armor? Yes, you have seen my magical armor.
And your sword, but it broke.
Yet I continue to be a knight-errant. The key term is not the word knight, it is the word errant. Do you know the meaning of this word, Squire Sanchez?
Serge admitted he didn't.
It means adventuring off course. We can say that an arrow is errant if the wind blows it sideways and it misses its target. or an errant bullet, or even an errant breeze, if the wind blows mostly from one direction and then a gust surprises us from another. A knight-errant is a knight who goes on adventures, but he, or she, or they, for knights-errant are not all men, does not serve a particular lord or king. For there were knights who were simply high-ranking soldiers, but that's not what a knight-errant is. We wander. We serve no one in particular. And that was a big problem. He chuckled at this and drew out the word big. Imagine if someone like me, someone who can fight a giant, as you have seen, and teleport to the other side of a solid door, and call upon his ghostly familiar to do his bidding, simply decided to rob people. To maraud through the land, taking whatever he wanted, killing whomever he wanted. Would you be able to stop me? No. And worse, my good Squire Sanchez, would you want to stop me, or would you want to be me? You see, in the same way your American capitalism allows for the absolute worst among you to control the lives of most of the people because they want to be like the billionaires, if left unchecked, knights-errant could do whatever they wanted, and people would allow it, in the vain hope that someday they too would be knights-errant, running unchecked across the land. He leaned back heavily in his chair, but he didn't recline the seat because the plane hadn't taken off and the pilot hadn't given him permission to do so. A solution had to be invented to prevent this. And do you know what that was? Chivalry? Well, yes, but that was merely a code laid on top of something far more grand. No, the bigger thing that had to be created to keep knights from raping and pillaging through the countryside. What? Love. They had to invent romantic love. But love always existed. Did it? Certainly there were many kinds of love. Long before knights-errant, there was deep friendship, there was erotic love, mostly between people who were not married to one another, paramours and mistresses and such. But remember, people did not choose their marital partners. In Europe, fathers could decide who would best join families, often with much older men marrying young girls, just children, to cement family relationships. Gross, Serge said. Quite, Rolando agreed. But the notion that two people could choose to be marital partners who valued one another, this is a relatively modern idea. And the idea they could be equal partners, this is a radically new idea, still foreign to many. Mostly men, Serge said. True. They deceived themselves into believing their mothers were happier in servile roles, then longed to be served by a social inferior to replicate the childhood they misremember. But the arrangement they long for does them no good either, for there is no real love without mutual respect, and once society recognizes the equality of anyone, treating them as less than equal prevents real love. So how does real love keep a knight from being a soldier or a marauder? Ah, there you have hit the nail right in the face, my good squire. Soldier or marauder, for a knight could be checked by his lord or king, if he were sufficiently loyal. But what was to keep a lord or king from sending a knight to simply maraud on his behalf? A code had to be devised, a system so pure that no king or noble could misuse the power, and no knight-errant could misuse it on his own. He had to bind himself to a code to protect the weak, to always do what was right, and to seek a reward which could not waver. In this way, knights-errant are obligated to protect the public from knights who are misusing our power. We check one another. And we do so because we cannot be tempted by riches or lands or titles. We do so for romantic love. The love of, in my case, a woman so perfect my love for her cannot be compromised. But couldn't the person you love just be like the bad king and send you to rape and pillage and stuff? Serge asked. Rolando stiffened. Of course not. Then he calmed. I see you do not refer to my Lady Nuria in specific, but to the abstract notion of the ladies and gentlemen knights-errant choose to serve, so I will not be offended, lest I be forced to challenge you to a duel to the death in order to defend the honor of Lady Nuria. But this is not what you meant. And no one, even someone of lesser character than Lady Nuria, for, of course, all are of lesser character than she, but even someone a great deal lesser could not command a knight-errant to forsake his vows and do evil in her name, for, you see, we do not take orders from the ones we serve. In fact, we do not really know them. Wait, what? In order to make sure the relationship is pure, we choose a lady or gentleman or gentleperson or whatever to serve. We inform them that we go to do great deeds in their name, and then we set off on our adventures." He waved a hand in the air. "I have only beheld the Lady Nuria a handful of times in my life, and mostly from a distance. I have only heard the music of her voice on the wind, save for the one time she spoke a single word to me."
"What did she say?" Serge asked. Rolando took a deep breath, then intoned,
"Okay."
"Okay?"
"Yes, now that you say it, it did sound more like a question," Rolando said. "I presented myself to her at her abode. I cannot describe the place in too much detail, lest I be overheard and some nefarious force discover her whereabouts and true identity. Suffice it to say, it was a humble dwelling, far beneath her. Instead of sending a servant, she graced me with her presence at her own door. I explained the nature of my vows and my desire to serve her and bring honor to her through my deeds. I informed her that I would protect her identity by giving her a kind of vicarious nom de guerre, the Lady Nuria of Barcelona. I told her I expected nothing of her, as I am undeserving of her love, but I asked that if I were to achieve true greatness in battle and win her renown, would she consider granting me her favor, and might perhaps consider loving me from afar, with even a fraction of the fervor of my love, for, I explained, her favor would be like a suit of armor and a sword and a shield all in one, granting me the power to defend the weak and protect the world from the forces of evil. She listened silently and with such grace to my whole explanation, which I had rehearsed 1,000 times in preparation for our meeting, and when I reached the crescendo, asking for her consideration, she gave her single magic reply, in a word imported to España and Catalunya from your United States."
"Okay," Serge said.
"Exactly. Though there was that beautiful lilt at the end which implied she was not completely committed to the idea, such that I need to do even greater works than I can imagine in order to someday win the prize of a confident okay."
Serge frowned for a long moment. "So, just so I'm getting this straight, you knocked on a stranger's door, told her you were going to go off on a bunch of adventures, and you'd give her credit for all your accomplishments, and then you just fucked off and never saw her again."
"I would not describe it exactly this way, but yes, this is true."
"And you do this so that you stay pure and don't, rob banks or steal cars?"
"Precisely. Though it also means that if I must rob a bank or steal a car to protect the weak and combat evil in the world, I am free to do so, in order to bring glory to the name of the Lady Nuria of Barcelona."
Serge stared out the window at the tarmac inching by as the plane made its way to its lane. "Huh." Rolando clicked his tongue quietly. Poe flew through the plane's bulkhead directly across Serge's lap and came to rest on Rolando's leg. The knight gently ran his palm over the feathers of the raven's skull-less head, then danced his fingernails down the bird's spine, an affectionate scritch. To anyone else in the plane, it looked like he was making a strange hand motion in the air, perhaps reacting to music in his head, though he wasn't wearing the wired earbuds in the little plastic bag in the pocket in the seat in front of his. "Can it feel your hand?" Serge asked.
Poe can make his substance somewhat more or less material at will, though it requires effort on his part. It is not easy to be a ghost."
Serge raised his eyebrows. I can't imagine, honestly. He held out a tentative hand. "Do you think it would let me?" The raven leaned its head into the young man's hand. Serge felt the prickly sensation of soft feathers barely there, like energy preceding matter, the touch before a touch. He tried to press harder against the raven's head to see if he could feel something more solid. His fingers told him they didn't sense any more resistance, but his eyes informed him they had passed well inside the bird's head, and he yanked them back. "Sorry," he whispered. Poe moved his head back and forth, requesting more petting and telegraphing curiosity about why the young man had stopped. Rolando watched Serge hesitantly return to stroking the raven's head, and changed the subject slightly to make his squire more comfortable.
"So if, when we arrive in the land of cleaving, the Lady of the Great Lake demands I pledge myself to her service, I cannot do so, for it would be a betrayal of my vows. And if I am forsworn in such a way, every true knight-errant in the world would be obligated by her or his own vows to strike me down. I must alight on some alternate means to convince her to share her information with us, but I am, how do you say, stretching my brains."
"Racking my brain."
"Yes, such a revolting image, though quite an apt description. I am torturing my mental faculties, but I cannot yet conceive of a solution."
"Yeah, I can see how that's a problem." Serge sat in silence while the plane took off. When the flight attendants ended their synchronized dance routine and turned off the video accompaniment playing on the little screens on the back of each seat, and the captain turned off the seatbelt signs, but did not turn off the no smoking lights, which had been illuminated for 36 years, Serge turned to Rolando. Rolando, are you training me to be a knight-errant?
Not every squire becomes a knight-errant, but perhaps someday you will choose to take vows of your own.
So you'll teach me how to fight and do magic, maybe? Rolando shrugged.
Perhaps, or perhaps I will turn you into a raven, and then after your death you may become my familiar, like my old friend Poe.
Wait, Poe was a person? Serge yanked his hand back again.
Yes, Aleix Poe.
He pronounced the X like an SH.
Aleix was my squire long ago.
He took over petting the raven's head.
You will find knight-errantry is a precarious line of work, but filled with differing opportunities for advancement.
This was his promotion?
Perhaps more of a 401k. Someday I will tell you the story of Aleix, but not yet.
Serge could tell something about the story made the old man emotional, but he couldn't quite read the mood. When sadness and pride mixed, they are difficult to extricate.
For now, we must focus on our plan of action in the land of cleaving.
9 rows back, Benjamin was similarly focused, consciously wrenching all his attention toward his immediate future in Cleveland. His last year did not have the same kind of resolution as the tale of Aleix, and he was not prepared to confront the pain of the experience yet. He did not dare look back at any moment before Salt Lake, lest he remain, like Lot's wife, embalmed in bitterness. If you're excited about this project, please subscribe on YouTube, or like and share on TikTok or Reels or whatever app you're on now. And if you're willing to support me as I craft this novel in serial form, please consider supporting my Substack or Patreon. Each week I'll give a shout out to some of those patrons. This week I'm thanking Patreon patrons Kevin Heiter, Jennifer Judine, and Jim67. Thank you all for your support. And if any of you listeners are creators and have something to plug, please email NotAPipePublishing at NotAPipePublishing@gmail.com. See you back here next week for Chapter 7 of Tilting at Windmills. Teaser, last week, I wondered how Rolando would manage to speak with a person who lives in a lake during a cold snap when it's -3 degrees in Cleveland and the entire lake is frozen. Well, we didn't make it to Cleveland this week, but maybe he'll figure it out next week, so join us for Chapter 7.